Good afternoon, and everybody. Welcome back to the show. The Atheist Experience is live July 13th, 2003. I'm your host, Martin Wagner. Ashley Perrien, my co-host as always.
Afternoon.
And thank you for joining us on this nice, hot, toasty Sunday afternoon. This show is sponsored by Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday morning at Hot Jumbo Bagels, 10:30 a.m., and that's located at 307 West 5th Street, downtown between Guadalupe and Lamar. And like I said, every Sunday morning except for the first Sunday of the month when we have our lecture series in the Mayor Room of the Austin History Center, which is at 9th and Guadalupe. And unless something has happened that I don't know about, I think our August scheduled speaker is a fellow named Klaus Linse, who is going to talk about anti-aging research. So, I remember Michelle at one point, our co-chair, saying that was tentative, but I haven't heard that he's not showing up, so we'll just work on the assumption that he is. So that will be the first Sunday in August. Other ACA activities include, of course, Godless Gamers, which is every Monday night at the home of Russell and Virginia Glasser, and ACA Happy Hour, which takes place Thursday evenings at Antonio's Tex-Mex near the intersection of Highway 183 and I-35. Starts about 7:30 p.m., but people trickle in all night long. So if you want to turn up for that, just look for the table that has the little sign of the Darwin fish there, and that'll be us. The nonprofits, our bi-weekly internet radio show, hosted by Jeff D., plays at the atheistnetwork.com website as an MP3 stream. The next episode will be this coming Saturday. Did I say Saturday originally? I thought I did, yeah. Yeah, it's two.
Yes, we do have one.
It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Saturday.
Yeah, it's every other Saturday. It's bi-weekly.
It's 1st, 3rd, and 5th.
Right. And so the next Saturday being the 3rd Saturday of July.
Yep.
Will be when it is on. And that's live. It'll be at 2 o'clock p.m.
Yes, 2 to 3:30.
2 to 3:30, and unless it's still broken or not functioning, there's an interactive chat room feature that you can use to sort of interact with the show, and sometimes the show will interact back. But it's a lot of fun. It's just 90 minutes of Jeff D. and Russell Glasser and Vic Farrow and whoever else is at Russell's house that day, just venting about this, that, and the other. So tons of fun to listen to. Nonprofits every other Saturday at 2 o'clock p.m. at the atheistnetwork.com website. And if you've missed a show, don't worry, just go to our website at the radio show page, and you can download MP3 streams of about like the last 10 or 12. Okay, University Atheists and Agnostics is a registered UT student organization, founded by our own Charles Tabney, and they are taking the summer off, but we'll be starting back up again with the fall semester. And if you are a UT student and or faculty member, you can, I think the email address, yes, it's uaa@mail.utexas.edu. There it is. The meetings will resume in the fall. And the first really good, successful student organization for atheist agnostics that I've known about. So just drop them a line, and Charles will drop you a line back and let you know more about the organization if you'd like to be part. Okay, so I do believe that does it for announcements. For more information about ACA, you can visit our website, which we've talked about now probably so much you're sick of it, at atheist-community.org, where there is a fact page. If you're new to this show, if you've never watched us before, we've been on the air, I think, about 5 years. And over those years, we have collected perhaps the most frequently asked questions that we get from callers like yourself. Just basic stuff, what is an atheist? Why don't you believe in God? If there's no God, what about this, that, and the other thing? A lot of those questions are assembled at our website on our fact page. So if you've never seen us before and you think you might like to call us up, maybe we've already answered your question. But if not, this is a live call-in show. We're on every Sunday here, 4:30 p.m. For 90 minutes, and we take live calls from folks just like yourself. And but we never get around to everybody. We try to, but we never manage to get around to everybody. The phones are always backed up. So for that purpose, we have set up a viewer email address at tv@atheist-community.org. And that's your email address to drop us a line and set us straight about whatever is on your mind. And if we get some really good letters during the week, of course, we bring the best ones here and read them out on the air. Although we will respond to everything, and sometimes I feel the letter is really good and there's a long, detailed explanation. We have a page on the website and post those too. So so that's your email address to write us and give us a piece of your mind. So I do believe that does it for the opening announcements. So I want to thank you all for joining us again. I'm sure we're going to have another good show, another show full of boisterous conversation. So, but now it's time for the news.
Okay.
So what's happening in the world, Ashley?
Okay, got 2 op-ed type stories here, and one actual, well, it's kind of sort of news. First one, a Jewish rabbi, actually, believes the Bible should be seen as a great work of fiction. This is actually an interview with Reformed Jewish Rabbi Sidney Brichto.
Okay.
And talking about different translations. There have been 3,000 translations of the Bible to date. Why another? The Bible has been tainted by holiness. No literary
That's
person.
I've never heard anyone say that before. That's a new critique.
Yeah. No literary person really wants to read it. It's a bestseller least read. I want people to read the Bible as literature. I want them to read the narrative as primarily fiction. They're good stories. I want to make the Bible a good read. I have sex scenes, for example, in the story of Esther, because I think it requires detail.
You remember what they did to Martin Scorsese when he tried that? That was not very well received.
Yep. I think it requires detail, not he saw her, he asked her to come up to his place, and he knew her, and she was pregnant. Something else happened.
Okay.
I'm very saddened by the fact that people are ignoring a great classic. I'm trying to get my translation put on the bookshops under classics, not the religion section, because no one goes near the religious section.
What bookshops does he shop at?
I don't know, but apparently...
Obviously ones that don't carry stuff like Left Behind.
Apparently he wants his version of the Bible to be a story, not a religious text.
Now,
however,
does he illuminate why he feels this way and
it's
why he's a rabbi if he thinks that the Bible is all just fiction?
Well,
why he would be
most of it
a religious leader?
Yeah, most of this is really just saying that it's a story. It's a good work of fiction.
Sure.
And also it goes into a little bit of something here. At one time, the Bible was where people looked for answers. It was displaced by science. The Bible was displaced as a moral book because, with the exception of the prophets and a portion here and a portion there, it's pretty frightening stuff. What I'm sorry about is that once it was removed from its pedestal as a source of knowledge, it was removed from the pedestal of great classic literature.
See, I don't know what this guy...
And then he goes on to another sexual thing down here. He seems to really get off on that.
You know, his perception of how the Bible is received by people, I think, is just way off base, right? I mean, given the kinds of calls we get from folks on this show every single week, right? You know, Christians seem to think that the Bible certainly has not been displaced as a moral source.
Yeah.
They think that it is the source of morality.
Yeah.
You have guys like Judge Roy Moore in Alabama who think that it's the source of all of our country's laws.
And that's, I think, part of his concern, is he's saying that you should not take it as a literal, is this true, is this not true?
But that's what
it's a story. It's a good story.
But he's trying to say that people have already dismissed it as a moral code, as a moral guidebook, and that clearly isn't true. If that is indeed what he's saying,
I would think for 90% of people that walk down the street, I would say to a certain extent it's true.
Really,
they may draw on the Bible for guidance and such.
Really?
But they're going to take their own moral, foundation, just like anybody else does, by thinking things through.
Well, sure,
now,
but
the Bible is they're going to find Bible passages that agree with what they think, and when they go against the Bible, well, then it's just ignored. Sure. They use it as a supporting document.
Well, yes, people do that.
And that's it.
That's true. People do that. But if you were to ask that man on the street, do you think that the Bible is no longer relevant as any sort of a moral code for humanity? He would say no.
Oh, of course not.
Now, of course, granted, the person may never have read it, in 20 years.
Yeah.
But that meme is in our culture, right?
Exactly.
Religion equals morals.
Exactly.
So I don't think it's quite as cut and dried as it's a picture as he wants to paint it.
Yeah.
Now, of course, maybe he's talking about the Jewish community and the Old Testament and what have you, but.
Although, again, it does have an interesting spin. He's talking about how the whole thing is just a story. It's, it's a good story. It's literature. Take it as that. The sad thing is that while religious people may think this is not the purpose, if people were to read it as literature, they might come to appreciate it as a religious literature too. They might even become moved to say that the study of the passages added a dimension to their life. You're saying one might be able to draw people to the religion through the narrative. Exactly. So he almost sounds, from this, like he's saying, if you read this as a good story, maybe you'll come to the faith.
And so it doesn't matter if it's true or not, if it brings people to the faith.
Exactly, but this is a rabbi.
Yeah.
He's writing the Old and the New Testament. He is doing the New Testament in this also.
So he's trying to win people over to Christianity by telling them that their holy book is just a big piece of fiction.
Apparently, yes. I question his methods. Slightly off kilter.
See, I mean, at least we're honest, right? I mean, we're here telling people, look, the Bible's fiction, so that's why you shouldn't be. We don't think that
he's got a slightly different tack
to believe in
though.
These things. But he's trying to say, yes, it's fiction, and that will make it rational to be a believer.
Yeah.
Really? No.
So anyway, it's called the People's Bible. There are 8 volumes already out there, and apparently, I think 10 more to come.
8 volumes?
That's what it says.
Is he just doing it like a book at a time?
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know.
And he's putting in all the sex and the juicy stuff, huh?
Apparently, yeah. So, I don't know if that's good or bad.
Well, if there's 8 volumes already out there and I don't know about it, I guess his hopes that this would become some major bestseller
be sweeping the nation.
Have gone unrealized. I mean, it's not like they're lining up at midnight at the bookstores to pick this up like Harry Potter.
People's Bible, yeah. Despite its racier moments. Okay.
Whatever.
Okay, next one.
Not much going on in his neighborhood. He's got to occupy his time how he can, I suppose.
Okay, now we'll jump over to Vatican City in Italy. Responding to a call by Pope John Paul II to young people to discover the value and importance of chastity, a Neapolitan theologian on Monday issued 10 commandments for a chaste summer vacation.
I bet those went over like a house on fire.
Rungi's first commandments for chastity are not to wear revealing clothes, go to places unknown to be morally dangerous, accept no invitations from strangers or to isolated places, and take rides only with trustworthy people. Don't flaunt your body with attitudes and movements of any kind, especially if you have an
just stand there like that?
Apparently.
Don't flaunt your body with movements of any kind? Can you blink your eyes?
Women should be careful with that one. But I do like the extension to the sentence again. Movements of any kind, especially if you have an excellent physique. Watch it. Don't betray your interior.
So all you fat, ugly women can just walk around in, spandex and halter tops all you like. Yeah.
Don't betray your interior self, but read interesting books that promote respect for the human person, women above all. Don't dismiss as banal such important values for you young people as love, fidelity, and purity of body and spirit. Now, again, very interesting. Speaking to pilgrims gathered at St. Peter's Square on the noon Angelus prayer on Sunday, the Pope offered young people the example of St. Maria Goretti, who was murdered on July 6, 1902, at the age of 11, protecting her virginity. A girl was protecting her virginity.
Yeah, so in other words, someone was trying
to... They killed her.
Yeah.
And now they're celebrating this.
Yeah. So, yeah. So the idea of... if you're going to try to use, pedophilic rape as the guideline for how young women should behave to remain, trying to protect yourself from a rapist isn't like you maintaining your chastity. It's just you trying to not get raped.
Exactly.
There's a bit of a difference, between like what some psycho is trying to do to a child and consenting adults.
Exactly.
But I guess not in the minds of
yes.
Well. So, I'm sure this was met with the resounding sound of chirping crickets and...
lead balloons.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we get on the irony train.
Yeah, the Pope some years ago caused quite a bit of displeasure among his flock, you might say. in Italy, when he made some statement to the effect that, you know how Catholics are just like, no divorce, none of that.
Yes.
The Pope has said at one point that divorced adults, it was okay for you to come back to the church.
Yeah.
On the grounds that you never had sex again in your life. And the general reaction from the public was, you know...
Yes, I go back to church.
So, all of this sort of self-denial of just something as basic and as natural as sex that comes from the Catholic Church is something that just is like, it's the more enlightened society becomes, it's a little left behind, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And what a wonderful segue, talking about enlightenment.
Huh.
This is from the Jewish World Review. Another Jewish story, interestingly enough. This is an editorial.
What kind of translation of the Bible are they doing?
This is an editorial type thing. This past century, the bloodiest in all of human history, should have laid to rest two of the most cherished theories about mankind postulated by the Enlightenment and secular humanism. One was the idea that all moral questions, all issues of right and wrong, good and evil, were subject to being correctly decided on the basis of man's reason alone. The idea brought with it, as a necessary corollary, the firm belief that man left to his own reasoning devices would invariably choose to do what is right, what promotes life and fairness and the common good. But none of these theories have proven true.
Who's saying this?
This is the author of this, a rabbi,
okay.
Beryl Wine. But none of these have proven true. And as an example, 1/3 of all commandants of the Nazi death camps...
Okay, let's stop right there. So he's clearly got there's certainly he's filtering that through the experience of being Jewish. Okay, he's forgetting, of course, that the entire world isn't made up of Nazi death camp commandants.
Of course.
Okay, the Nazi situation, right, was like, that was a structured political movement.
Yeah.
Okay, put together by a megalomaniac.
Yeah.
And there are reasons why it became quite so powerful. You know, a lot of it having to do with obedience to authority.
Yes.
Which is natural among people. And if you do have a corrupt authority, generally speaking, people will go against their natural instincts.
Yes.
Of altruism and self-preservation and what have you, because it is also sort of wired into our genes to look to authority figures and trust them.
Yeah. And follow along with everybody else.
Yeah.
If you can get a couple people following you, you can get more.
Yeah. But,
So 1/3 of all commandants in Nazi death camps had held either a PhD or MD degree. Man, left to his own reason, will not choose right. Reason by itself is death and destruction, oppressive theories, and murderous social engineering.
Wow. Okay, think about that.
No faith and no belief has led us to the brink of the social abyss of self-destruction. Faith is perfect. Reasoning will get you in death camps.
Okay, this guy's alternate universe must be a really interesting place.
Exactly. It's a kind of a mirror opposite of ours.
Because, there wasn't really reason at work in Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Nazi Germany was rife with all sorts of superstitious craziness.
Yes.
Okay. Hitler saw himself as having been sent by God to do what he was doing. They all Hitler saw himself as a messianic figure.
Yeah.
Okay. And, the 9/11 hijackers, what they left behind wasn't like an essay detailing all of the reasoned arguments why they were crashing planes into buildings. What they left behind was a 5-page document full of prayers that mentioned the word God 88 times.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think this guy has a real skewed idea of what it is that, is really behind some of the worst behaviors in the human race. There is a name for the period of history, when religion and faith ruled the world. Okay, that's called the Dark Ages.
Yes.
Right, and there is the name for the time in history when religion got pushed to the back burner and people started using secular philosophies and reason to come up with better ways to live, and that's called the Age of Enlightenment.
Yeah.
Okay,
and that's exactly what he's railing against in this story.
Yeah.
The Enlightenment.
Right.
So.
Yeah, he's wanting again to sort of
he'd go back to.
So this guy is just this is a pure attack on reason.
Yes.
Just from the ground up.
Yeah.
Reason as a concept is something that this guy is trying to tear to pieces.
Yeah. And,
where did this come from? Where did this essay come from?
I said it was the Jewish World Review.
Bizarre.
He writes columns. Apparently
Okay.
every week. Our society hungers for a return to self, to a system of eternal values, to a disciplined lifestyle, and to the true liberty of faith, which will free us from the ills of mindless conformity.
What is religion?
But mindless conformity.
Hello?
Religion is mindless conformity.
Okay, yes.
And that's it.
And what freedom does faith offer other than the freedom to just sort of like believe what you feel like and not care
Follow
about what's
along
true?
or burn in hell.
Yeah. Well, the Jews don't have that kind
True.
of... But it leads to that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Just strange.
Yep. Jewry needs a healthy dose of realism and should forsake many of the utopian, naive, and dangerous beliefs and theories that have characterized our journey in the modern world over the past 2 centuries.
That's just weird. I mean,
This guy is really out of whack.
He's just saying that faith leads to realism, a healthy...
Yeah. And
Wow,
he
yeah,
takes,
he's-
obviously, examples and stories from the Bible to back up his points.
Yeah. Wow.
Go figure.
What a confused guy. I mean,
Yeah. No
No,
kidding.
because it is actually known now. There's a very interesting book I picked up. I haven't finished it yet. And there's another one, too, by the same author, a guy named Matt Ridley, who's a well-known evolutionary biologist, and he's written several popular books on the subject. Been looking at a book of his called The Origin of Virtue, where it talks about, why it is that, where good behaviors come from.
Yeah.
Okay, and he makes a very strong case for the idea that cooperative behavior is something that is hardwired into our genes. Just like many, many other things that enable any species to survive.
Yeah.
Okay, cooperative
Certain
behaviors
are also.
Yes. And he has a new book out in hardback called Nature via Nurture, where he talks about the relationship between how we really are and how we are hardwired to our behaviors genetically versus how culture and society impacts that.
Yeah.
Now, it's not to say that society doesn't have an impact. But usually what you find in these cases where people are engaging in these sort of extreme behaviors, okay, it's that usually there is a very powerful authority figure in charge who is taking a really controlling role, and people can't escape that.
Yeah.
And because it is natural for folks to look for authority figures to guide them through life, because that's an offshoot of us having parents.
Yeah.
And when we're very small in our formative years, relying on our parents to protect us and to guide us and to sort of help us get to, get to where we need to be, people do continue that into adulthood. I would suggest that that's a lot of what's behind religion, too. People want to still have that parent figure after they've left home and they no longer have their real parents as parents.
Exactly.
You still want that celestial parent in the sky.
Everyone always wants a safety net, essentially.
Yeah.
If things go really bad, they've got something they can fall back on.
Yeah. So I think that it is natural for people to be cooperative in their behaviors as opposed to antisocial.
Yes.
Social behavior is more natural to us than antisocial behavior. However, because it is also natural for us to look for authority figures to obey and to guide us and to follow, we can go against or, what you might consider altruistic or, kinder, gentler behaviors if we have an authority figure we trust leading us in that direction.
Yeah.
And that's been proved. Yeah. There was a famous experiment done by a psychologist named Milgram, the Milgram's 37 experiment, which so in fact, Peter Gabriel did a song about it, where the whole experiment was about obedience to authority, and what they had was like this college students, who were the subjects, and they would have a room where like this dude was all wired up to electrodes and stuff. And the guy just gave him a knob and said, keep turning it, right? And, administering electric shock to the person.
Or what they thought was shock.
Yeah, it was all fake, right? It was all a setup, but the person doing the knob turning didn't know that. And what happened was, the researcher there, who was the authority figure in question, kept just saying, turn it up, more and more and more. And people most of them kept doing it.
They were hesitant.
Okay. Yeah.
But they kept turning it up.
But 37% of the test subjects were willing to take the electric shocks to lethal levels.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So there is this conflict between, our natural tendency to want to get along, to cooperate because we need to do that, because if we didn't do that, we'd all be dead, versus this blind obedience to authority that is a problem that people have, and that religion has thrived on.
Yes.
Religion, especially Christianity, I don't know so much about Judaism, but Christianity especially, has survived on that authoritarianism for nearly 20 centuries.
Yeah. It's all based on that. You have this authority, this is the word of God. Do not question.
Yeah.
Even in private, you do not question this. You just accept it blindly.
Well, this rabbi guy here, he's certainly not the first religious figure to see reason and critical thinking, right, as a threat to the faith and try to shoot it. Augustine did that and all the rest of it. So, but still, talk about a misguided individual.
And talk about stretching the field. This one saying we cannot use reason, we have to rely on faith. This one saying, the Bible, it's a good story.
Yeah.
Hey, let me throw in some sex for you. Make it a little more interesting.
It's all just fiction. Yeah. I think we need to have like a celebrity rabbi death match and get those guys in the ring and just...
Let them duke it out and see
we'll settle it over, 2 rounds and, whoever does the first takedown will be the... Boy. Speaking of, we'll go ahead and put that phone number up on screen too. But speaking of like the Bible as a story, a couple of stories related to that while we're letting the phone calls line up. Mel Gibson's done this movie, right? And called The Passion.
Ah, yes.
And there's a trailer for it up online now.
Yeah.
An early trailer. I don't think that he's gotten distribution for it yet. Yeah, and it looks gorgeous, right? It looks, like it's going to be a really beautiful movie. And he's given it like the full Braveheart treatment.
Yeah.
And when I was watching the trailer, I'm sitting here going, wow, this is really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And, it, certainly in the hands of a really good storyteller, which I think Mel Gibson is, nothing else illustrates one of the enduring appeals of these religious tales, which is that they are first and foremost a terrific story.
Yes.
And one of the things that I think distinguishes people, as creatures, is that we are storytellers.
Yeah.
And stories represent things to us that end up having a great impact on our lives. Yeah. So it's certainly understandable why, if you were just take like the story of Jesus, and kind of isolate it from everything else, and just take it as a story, you could see it as a very powerful, moving tale of sacrifice and courage and all the rest of it. But I think that it's when you turn that into an institution that becomes this extremely controlling political force over society, and that fills people's heads with ideas like, and if you don't believe this, you deserve to be tortured forever.
Yeah.
Well, then I think
that's where it starts going overboard.
Yeah, it really loses a lot of stuff. Yeah. And, Michael Shermer, who is the editor of Skeptic Magazine, he's got this book called How We Believe, which is all about, just reconciling belief, in the modern age, and why does religion still survive, in this day and age when, we live in a scientific culture. And so you would think that we don't really need that anymore. But religion continues to thrive. So why does it continue to thrive? Why do so many people still need it? And he discusses that a little bit, is that there is, the whole power of myth to sort of shaping, a cultural identity.
Yeah. It's just amazing that more people don't realize a myth when they see one. Mm-hmm. As in they can look back at the Greek gods and the Egyptian gods and all of these ancient things and see that, these were great stories and people believed them. And then they completely dissociate that idea from...
But my God's real.
We have a God and we have a Jesus and all this kind of stuff, and that's real. Mm-hmm. It's just strange that people can segment their mind so completely. Yeah. And never shall meet.
There's that influence, it's religion having been a major authority figure in culture and in life for a long time. It just, the meme gets implanted and it's very hard to shake.
Yeah.
Shermer has an interesting tactic that he uses when he is involved in a creationism debate.
Okay.
Where he will tell the participants, okay, well, if you think creationism ought to be taught in schools alongside science, Well, then let's look at a few creation stories and talk about which ones ought to be taught. And then he goes down this list of like 7 or 8 creation stories from different religions, just giving the general outline of what this particular creation story says about the beginning of everything. He says, well, what about this one? Do you think this one should be taught? And it's like, right? Yeah. It gets to the very bottom one, right? And it's the biblical creation story, but it's told in just. Yeah. He
God
just
poofed the world into existence.
Well, he doesn't quite say it that way, but he gives it in a very general sense of what the whole framework of it is. Yeah. And by the time he gets to that one, everyone is still saying no, not that one shouldn't be taught in classes and he's like, well, wait a minute, this one's yours. Why wouldn't you? And then of course they realized that they were trapped, and actually they probably resent him even more for it. What one of Michael Shermer's criticisms against the creationists, right, is that he acknowledges a lot of the value of myths to culture.
Yes. And
how they help sort of define a culture and give it an identity from which it can then move forward. And that's what when the original biblical texts, the Old Testament texts, were written down. Archaeology suggests that these were originally written down when the Jewish people, back in something like the 7th century BCE, were finally beginning to develop their own society and their own cultural identity. Yes. And this is when myths start to take really tangible form. It's always at that point in the development of a culture when it's like, okay, it's time for us to like set ourselves apart and say this is who we are as a people. Yeah. And so myths to a culture have that value. And Christianity is sort of like our culture's myth.
Yeah, it's our myth.
Yes. But by literalizing these mythic beliefs, he says one of his comments about creation is just like they've taken this wonderful creation story and they've ruined it because they've insisted that it's like scientific and it's literal. Yeah. And it has to be, that's how it actually, he said, you don't really understand the function of what these stories are to a culture. Yeah. Yeah. So it's an interesting criticism that, so there's that. So I mean, that there is, something very powerful that speaks, I kind of think, to the human psyche in a very deep way. Yeah. With a lot of these myths is certainly, difficult to deny, but, at a certain point, it's like Santa Claus with children. Yeah. It's like that's a story that serves a certain function at a certain age.
Exactly.
And there's a time to sort of grow up and let go of.
It's all about the memes.
Yeah.
They serve pieces of religion serve a very important function in people's psyche. Again, that idea that you always have a parent or a safety net watching out for you, even when it's not your biological parents or your, the people who raised you. You could still fall back on God. He loves you, and He'll take care of you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's a thing that does provide comfort for believers.
Exactly.
Okay, we got one caller lined up. We're going to let a couple more. Well, he went away, so I guess he got fed up with us because I was going to getting ready to hit that button, and he went bye. And that's cool.
Actually, talking about Shermer, it's kind of funny too. A little bit off topic here, but in the book he talks about religion, about lots of different topics. One of which is UFOs and alien abductions, and he talks about his own alien abduction story when he was actually abducted by aliens, or as he remembers it at least. And from what I remember, the story was he did these bike trips, like these bike tour things across, ride across the entire country in 2 weeks, I think.
Right.
And when you're riding on a bike and pushing yourself physically for 20 hours straight, your mind messes up. Essentially.
Road hypnosis, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially because you're right on the side of the road.
White line fever.
Yeah. It's you're on these way off the beaten path road, so you're not being mowed down by 18-wheelers. And I mean, you're riding along the yellow line, you got this white line going along the side for, 35 miles
and
without a break.
Like,
I mean, you just, but anyway, his crew truck or whatever with the lights on him, he's riding at night and he starts hallucinating that he's being chased by aliens. And eventually they finally catch up with him and they're saying, look, dude, you've been riding for 24 hours straight. Give it a break.
Yeah, he thought his team
Exactly.
were these aliens
Abductors
who were going to probe him.
And he finally did stop, and he was sitting down with them and stuff like that. But he remembers he was questioning them, like, should I, use a little spaghetti sauce as lubricant on my bike? Trying to catch them out on something. So because he said they looked exactly like people, but they weren't. And I had to find some way to catch them out. He was making up all these little tests for him.
That's great. Got another callers. Okay, the callers are starting to line up. We've got one on the line, and we're going to go ahead and talk to him. And then 477-2288 is that number to call us live. Hey, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hi.
Hey.
What's up?
Hey. What's up?
What's the topic?
Whatever. What do you want to ask?
I don't know.
Okay, well, call us back when you know. All right.
Hint, it's the atheist experience.
I got it. Yeah, that's all. I mean, it's, fair enough. Just be clueless. Come on. Speaking of fiction and stories and weirdness and aliens and people who are very strange, got a phone call about a week or so ago. I meant to talk about this on last week's show, but didn't. From a reporter from the LA Times who had stumbled upon my TBN Watch website that I used to do. I used to do this website that was like a humorous critical site about Trinity Broadcasting. I did it off and on for about a year, and then got tired of it because you watch TBN for about 6 months and you've seen it, right?
You go a little nuts.
Yeah, it's like you start to see aliens who want to probe me, right? But he was just calling because apparently they're doing they're doing this investigative report about just the network and the company and sort of like a corporate history, and they're kind of looking for dirt, right?
Okay.
Because he stumbled upon something in one of my articles talking about the movie Omega Code.
Yes.
Which TBN was sued for plagiarizing. They
Really?
were hit with this massive plagiarism suit. There's a woman named Sylvia Fleener who was a minister from Virginia.
Okay.
Who wrote a novel called The Omega Syndrome. And which is all about the end of the world and the Antichrist and stuff, right? And she sent the manuscript of this novel to Jan Crouch at TBN. Yeah. She of the pink wigs. And, and reportedly, what Sylvia says Jan Crouch did, and ultimately the whole company did, was they just took the manuscript and were like, we'll make a movie out of this, and no one will notice. Yeah. And there was depositions from Jan Crouch's personal assistant at the time. Okay. Who is a woman who resigned when she found out that her husband and Jan Crouch were having an affair. Okay. And so there's this kind of the extramarital scandal behind the scenes at TBN, right? And ultimately TBN settled the suit out of court, which is something that you only do if you're guilty, really. Yeah. I mean, if you're completely innocent 100% of the thing that someone is suing you for, you're going to challenge. You don't say,
let's pay you a whole bunch of money to get out of it.
Yeah, you challenge it and you countersue and you stand up. So, I mean, the fact that they settled me, they did it, right? They ripped the film off of this unpublished book. Yeah. So they settled with this woman, Fleener, and according to the LA Times guy that I talked to, she's still very bitter. Still really upset and pissed off. But he just called. We talked for a bit. I didn't really have anything to give him, but he just called wanting to know if I knew of any other, disgruntled employee. And so sorry. Apparently, Jan Crouch has colon cancer. Wow. And was successfully treated for it, but I think some of it's still in her lymph nodes. Okay. So. Is undergoing treatment for that. Now that's a bad thing, and there's certainly hope that everything is done to make a full recovery. And like I said, they got the colon cancer, and they're still now trying to figure out how to treat the lymph cancer. And I hope that goes great, right? We wouldn't wish that on anyone,
of course.
But as a sardonic aside. We mentioned, I was talking to the reporter and he mentioned, just hopefully they don't go to Benny Hinn for help. Oh. And I said, well, that's an excellent point. I mean, here's old Benny Hinn claiming to raise the paralyzed out of their wheelchairs and
Exactly.
cure people of stuff like AIDS just by doing this to them.
Yep.
It seems like, cancer of the lymph nodes, lymphoma shouldn't be too much of a problem. I mean, they should this is an excellent opportunity for him to prove his claim to the scientific world.
Yeah.
But gee, what are the Crouches doing? They're going to the hospital and they're relying on science and they're getting all this chemo and all this treatment.
And they don't even have to go see Benny Hinn. Benny Hinn does it over the television too.
That's right.
Just touch your television.
That's right.
So
perfect.
Make a videotape.
Perfect opportunity for him to. Would not God, if these people on TBN are truly His anointed? Yeah. Wouldn't God be one? Oh, well, cancer, can't have that. I need you around to do my work.
Exactly.
You would think, but the fact that they haven't gone to Benny kind of says something. Like maybe they know it's all a load of BS. Yeah. But they're selling it because it makes them lots of money.
Of course.
But it was interesting because his interest in TBN is just how they're just a very curious organization. It's like most churches, he said. Like the Vatican, right? All through the years, it's like they've of course tried to build. TBN is trying to build this empire. Yeah. It seems like, but it's like an empire of TV stations. Yeah. And the Vatican, at least was trying to build, and of course, Protestant Church after. The whole intent was let's build an empire of souls, right? Let's win them, and hand over fist. But I said, well, of course, what I'm sure Paul Crouch would argue is that he's doing the same thing. Yeah. He's just taking it into like the digital cable age, right? Exactly. And all these TV stations that he gets all this money in, and then he puts up some new TV station in some obscure third world country, and he's like, that's no different than the missionary work that all the priests in the Vatican used to do hundreds of years ago. It's just that the TV stations are the new digital churches. Yeah.
And now they're trying to raise money so that they can fulfill prophecies in the Bible and get the angels to circle the earth. Yeah. AKA
the angels.
Satellites.
The satellites, right. But, it's interesting though. When I was doing TBN Watch, mine was the only website, webpage that I knew of, or at least it was a blog, it was a column. Making fun of TBN that was written by an atheist. Wow. But there are a lot of anti-TBN websites on the web. And the overwhelming majority of them are by other Christians. Yeah. Who are like really livid at these clowns on TBN for, that they think are just making a travesty of the gospel. And so it's kind of fun to watch, Christian A beating up Christian B, talking about what a fraud he is and the rest of it is kind of. But okay, now the calls are lined up and so it's time. Phil is on line one. How you doing?
Good. How y'all gentlemen do today?
We're okay. What's up?
I was reading the paper today. I don't know if you folks read it in the lifestyle section. There was a guy that wrote a book about these Mormons.
Yes.
You did read about that.
I noticed a bit on it. We talked about it a bit this morning, yeah.
Yeah, that's the guy who did this John Krakauer wrote the Into Thin Air. About,
he did.
Yeah. I saw I didn't see the thing in the paper today, but there was another article that I read about it on some news site. Yeah. And the Mormons are all upset about it.
Well, the Mormons are livid about it.
Yeah. Haven't read it yet, but it'd be interesting.
I just wanted to call and see if you read that and encourage your viewers, if they got the paper, to go ahead and check out that. It's basically a review of the book, and it gives you kind of a brief overview of this. This sister-in-law and her baby got killed by these two other brother-in-laws who were contemplating polygamy, and she was a well-educated woman, and she was all against it, and apparently making waves, and apparently they killed her over this. Yeah. And apparently this writer does a really in-depth review of the Mormons or the Church of Latter-day Saints, but dating to the 1850s, and the violence, the string of violence that's ran through that sect all these years. And so,
I remember reading an article in a issue of Free Thought Today, which Freedom from Religion Foundation puts out. It's their little newsletter, and it was a woman who was an ex-Mormon writing about her experiences in the church, and she, wasn't subjected to violence, right? But it's apparently you're sort of brought up with this whole idea that if you're a woman in the Mormon church, that you'll get a husband and he'll take care of you, and then all will be well, right? Yeah. And she went ahead and just went through the whole process like they raise you to go through, and married this guy who was in the church, and he turned out to just be a bum. Didn't beat her up or anything, but he just, couldn't hold down a job, and he drank, and he was just, just a schmo, right? Just king of all losers, right? And she was really, really confused by all of this, and she said she would pray, and she would go to her Mormon church leaders for counseling about her marriage, and they would tell her that it was her fault.
Yeah.
That she wasn't supporting him enough. She wasn't praying hard enough. She
wasn't getting him jobs.
Yeah. Well, no, not that. It was like she wasn't, it was her job apparently to shoulder the whole spiritual burden of making the family work through prayer to get him to do what he was supposed to be doing, which is, being the breadwinner and the guy running the family. Yeah. And so she kept getting all this, and she just went into this, there was this never-ending spiral of misery until she just said, the heck with all this, and she completely broke from the church. And but yeah, there's a very controlling sort of culture that is in play there, and I guess in the case in this book, that's the most extreme example of it, I suppose.
Well, it wouldn't be so bad, but they're contemplating getting Orrin Hatch on the Supreme Court. And also, from what I understand,
wow.
From what I understand, in Salt Lake City, if you're not a Mormon, you can't get contracts. You can't hardly walk down the street. I had a friend that went into Utah one time with like a case of beer. Apparently, you can't even buy real beer in Utah. Anyways, when there was a case, they accused him of bootlegging.
Really?
Wow.
Can't believe it. Yeah.
Wow. They did he get arrested?
Oh yeah. Well, they busted him and then they questioned him. I don't think they followed through on it, but somebody apparently saw him with this case of beer and they just tried to nail him to the wall for it. It was outrageous. I'll let you guys go.
That's weird. Well, that's interesting. Thanks for the input. Take care. Thanks. Yeah, of course, also, Ogden, Utah is home to the Summum sect.
Yes.
Which are a really strange bunch of folks.
Yeah.
Who, there was an interesting episode, was it about last year?
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, the Summum organization, which is this little fringe, I don't know if they're called, I don't know what the hell they are. They're just a gang of...
Or even a joke among themselves, possibly. Yeah. I'm not sure.
But they're this out there religious sect.
Yeah.
Who demanded in equal time to have the 7 aphorisms of their religion put on a plaque in the public building next to apparently where there is a Ten Commandments monument.
Yeah.
And this immediately caused like a big old stink. Mainly among the Mormons saying, we can't have these people are weirdos. But of course, it immediately raised a really valid point, which is that the problem
if you're going to have one,
from a church-state separation aspect is exactly that. I mean, that you got to be fair to everybody. It's just like at school, don't bring cookies to class unless you're going to share and have one for everybody, right? And so immediately there becomes a problem when if you want to have a religious monument for a particular sect or sectarian faith in a country where there are something like 2,000 religions practiced, and presumably our Constitution guarantees religious freedom, and not allowing the government to play favorites with one religion over another, because no one should be made to feel like their government doesn't like them.
Yeah.
So, but Utah, interesting. Well, I'll be sure and not to take beer if I ever find myself in Utah. And if I ever find myself in Utah, it will mean that something has gone really wrong with my life.
Beer is the least of my concerns at that point.
So, okay, let's see what Carl has to say. Hi, you're on TV.
Hey, man, how you guys doing?
We're good. What's up?
I don't think your last caller has ever been to Utah.
Okay.
I used to work in the oil field, and I did some work in Utah.
And did they let you have beer?
Man, we used to go to Bullfrog on Lake Powell. One year we unloaded 52 cases of beer, and nobody said squat.
Okay.
You can buy beer, you can buy liquor in Utah. They just have private clubs.
Yeah, that's right. It's
Mormons,
like it's dry, right?
You might not agree with their religious beliefs, but those are their personal beliefs.
Sure.
And they're good people.
Oh, I have, I've known good people in all walks of life. I mean, I know my parents are Christian. I've known some Mormons who are swell folks.
But brother, I swear to God, you guys, why does it upset you that some people believe in God and some people don't?
It doesn't
upset us.
Every week making fun of people. You're saying,
hang on, listen.
These idiots here think that this is going to happen.
Hang on, listen.
I'm not getting in your face. I'm just asking.
But it's a valid point, and let me clarify exactly what our position is on that, or at least I'll speak for myself, and then Ashley can answer. Sure. Is that I don't disrespect people. I respect people, and I respect people's right to believe or practice or live their personal lives how they see fit. But beliefs and points of view, opinions, life philosophies, what have you. Those are subject to criticism, and in my view, I don't respect all of them because I think that a belief or an opinion or a political stance or what have you, it isn't always equally deserving of respect. A belief only deserves as much respect as evidence warrants, And so if I don't think a particular belief stands up to the evidence, first I'll criticize that. And then if you have people who are trying to take their beliefs, like some of, not necessarily the Mormons, but like the George Bush and the mainstream Christian
why
right.
don't you say the way Democrats set up welfare legislation then?
Yeah, well, but that's
George
not...
Bush, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a... Well, that would be, whether it's a political thing, like you said, or whether somebody's particular view on welfare, but particularly religion. I mean, this show's about atheism. It's not about politics.
Right.
So you'll find that if there is a religious leader on the far right, okay, and they are attempting to, legislate their particular sectarian beliefs over others, which is, unfair to people and it's in violation of the Constitution, we'll criticize that.
Hang on for a minute. It's not unfair for them to attempt to legislate their views.
Well,
that's not unfair.
If it runs contrary to what the Constitution allows, then
You've got
it's a problem.
435 people in Congress, man.
Well,
and one guy proposing something.
Well,
I love hearing the rhetoric was really cracking me up about how the Christian Coalition ran the GOP. The GOP took over the Congress in 1994, and as far as I can tell, abortion's still legal. There's no mandated prayer in school.
But it's not like they're not trying.
What's that?
It's not like they're not trying.
Well, so what?
Well, so what?
So what?
It's good for them, but
somebody comes out and proposes a legislative agenda that people don't agree with, right? They have a right to propose that.
Well, they have a right to
propose. Absolutely.
And if people want to go ahead and they're elected representatives.
And if we think it's a bad idea, we have a right to come out and say that's a bad idea for this, that, and the other reason.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. Sure.
But it's not. You guys are making it sound like it's dangerous for people to oppose. Oh, well, they're trying to do this. Well, so what, man?
Well,
that's why we have a political process. If it works, it works. If they can get 400 or if they can get 260 people to vote for it, they get it.
Yeah.
And that's the system we live under.
Well, in principle, right. But I mean, I don't agree that one should. I mean, that's not a reason not to have convictions. That cause you to really, stand up for your own position.
Absolutely.
And say that if the powers that be are trying to do something that you really think is harmful, which we think that
advocate your position without denigrating your opponents.
Well, if a particular opponent does something that's worthy of denigration, we'll denigrate them. Okay, well, I mean that's freedom too. I mean that's our expressing. If someone's out there doing something that we think's bad, we're going to take that person to task for them.
Yeah, but if you make it a personal attack, what you've done is you've stopped the debate because now the person has to defend himself against your personal attack instead of talking about the issue.
Well, I don't think I've ever hit anyone with a personal attack that wasn't based on something they did.
Yeah,
it wasn't just like so and so is.
People can have honest differences of opinions when it comes to stuff like politics and legislation without being open to personal attacks. Robert Kennedy said it best.
Yeah,
he said the problem with extremists is not that they are extreme; it's that they are intolerant. The evil lies not in what they say about their cause; it lies in what they say about their opponents.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't think I'm advocating any extremist view. And again, if an individual does something that I think is reprehensible, like if some conservative politician comes out and he makes some bigoted anti-gay statement or anti-Jewish statement or anti-unbeliever statement or something like that, I'll attack them for that.
Well,
if a Catholic priest molests a child, I'll attack them for that.
Well, like I said, man, you keep trying to associate the religious right with the conservative movement. Democrats.
Are you saying the religious right isn't part of the conservative movement? I think that's naive.
There's about as many people in the so-called religious right as there are in now, like about 200,000 people.
But it doesn't mean they don't have influence.
Well,
I mean, when you see when George W. Bush is photographed in the media, attending church, and he's got James Dobson on one side and he's got Pat Robertson on the other.
Bill Clinton goes to church and has Al Sharpton on one side and Jesse Jackson on the other.
Not that he doesn't have the right to associate with those folks, but I can look at that and say there's a connection here, and the religious and the religious right is in George Bush's pocket, or vice versa. I think it's a
when is the legislative agenda of the religious right going to be implemented? It's been 10 years since the so-called tools of the religious right were elected to office. So when did abortion become illegal? When did they mandate prayer in school?
The point is
that they're trying.
They are trying as hard as they possibly can. It's the other side.
And go ahead and present mandating prayer in school.
And it's the other side, and it's people voicing their concerns and their opinions that is stopping it from going through.
Yeah.
Now we realize that that 90% of the people are not fundamentalists. 90% of, Christians or Jewish or, whatever religion or non-religion you want to take are kind of just mainstream. You believe what you believe. We believe what we believe, and the world's a happy place. But there are some, people on the extreme wings out there who are really making things bad.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
Listen,
wait a second.
Stuck on TV.
An example. Roy Moore, the Alabama Supreme Court Justice, he put up the Ten Commandments monument in his courthouse.
Right.
And when he
illegally,
when he went to court for that, essentially the way he's describing things is that the only true religion that really that gets any protection is Christianity.
Well, he's wrong.
Exactly.
And
he's wrong. He's a moron for something like that. We need to stop him.
Like I said.
But it's more than that. I mean, he's a powerful figure in Alabama.
If he was such a powerful figure, the Ten Commandments would still be up there.
Well, they are. I mean, he's defied at least one court order to have them removed, and what he is doing is he is now taking this situation and he's politicizing it. And every time he gets a decision against him and his ability to have this monument in his church, he takes that and presents himself to his constituency as, oh, look at me, I'm this martyr. The evil God.
That's one guy in Alabama. Big deal, man.
Yeah, and Adolf Hitler was one guy in Austria.
And
that's an extremist.
So hang on for a minute. So you just a minute ago said that 90% of the people in America are moderates or not extremists when it comes to religion. But then you said because we got this idiot judge in Alabama, you're comparing him to Adolf Hitler in Austria.
Not in a literal sense, but what I'm saying is to dismiss people, to just say, hey. All it is a guy with his opinion, and all it is over here is just another guy with his opinion. And so, why should we care? Well, it's because, it has happened in the past where you think a little guy with an opinion turns out to be a very big, powerful, dangerous guy. I don't think that it's likely that Judge Roy Moore in reality will actually turn into someone comparable to Hitler. No, but what I'm saying is. The position you seem to be in,
what Hitler really did.
But the point that I'm trying to make, right, is that the position that you seem to be defending, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that everyone should just live and let live, and if some nut over here happens to have an intolerant point of view, or this or that or the other, or if somebody over here has a political position that is wildly in opposition to yours, don't worry about it, because all it is a guy giving his opinion, and it's never going to make any difference anyway. Right. And I think that that's a naive point of view. I think that individuals do end up making differences in society.
In the United States,
I mean, look at Robert Kennedy, the example you just gave, right? I mean, he wasn't an ideologue like Judge Roy Moore was, or like some of these other people that we've named, but he was a guy who made a difference. Martin Luther King was a guy who made a difference.
But Martin Luther King certainly was an ideologue.
Well, he may have been, but
and
the point of view is
Martin
that
Luther King was misguided because most of his stuff was driven by religion.
Well,
his tenets. See, this is another thing that I haven't seen from you guys. Religion doesn't dictate policy to society. Religion follows
I think that's a very naive point of view.
It certainly tries to.
That's why the Catholic Church in 1966, when it started losing members, decided to do the Mass in English, right? That's why the Lutheran Church is now okay with abortion, and the Episcopal Church is okay with gay marriaries.
That's why last year,
25 years ago, they were steadfast.
And not every church agrees with that. I mean, those events that you list.
Give me a second to finish what I'm saying.
Okay.
Societies set the standards of behaviors, and churches follow along. In the old days, in 1265 and 1400 and 1500, perhaps churches did, because it was a different world then. It's a much different world that we live in now. And I said it, and as I said, if the church was dictating policy, there's no way in the world that gay marriages would be allowed, or gay ministers would be in the Episcopal Church, because 20 years ago they were saying no way.
Yeah. And the reason that things like
society's attitudes towards gays changed, and the church.
And why has it changed? It's changed, I would argue, because
it doesn't make any difference why it changed.
No, it does make a difference why it changed. It changed because of folks like us, whom you seem to think shouldn't be out here doing what we're doing.
No, I didn't say that at all.
Saying things
I said that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. I'm just asking,
Saying things like the people who are trying to use their religion to wield power over others are wrong in what they are doing.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Okay, and that's all we're saying on this show, and I don't think that constitutes personal attacks.
Well, I don't know, man. Like I said, when you seem to
Well,
be...
look, either you agree that it's wrong for folks to attempt to use their religion to
Well, you know what?
power,
I don't think it's wrong. I think that everybody in this country has the right to propose whatever they want to propose. But the way that our process works is that if the majority don't think it's a good idea, it usually doesn't happen.
But the majority, I think, as we have seen, can be and wants to be, I think, influenced by authority figures. People look to authority figures.
That's you're denigrating, most of Americans, saying, well, you're just some sheep that's being led along.
I'm not doing that. I'm saying, it has been
influenced by stuff.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
We're not saying Americans do this versus anybody else. It's human nature. I mean, just look at kids in school.
Yeah.
Look at, even at, people in college. You always have people congregating around one leader.
Yeah.
It's human nature.
Just people look for folks to sort of lead them.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not, it doesn't make you sheep, but there is something about that. I mean, we talked earlier on the program, I don't know if you were tuned in at that time, but we were talking about the Milgram's experiment, which of course was, took it to an extreme, but it was an experiment detailing with obedience to authority, finding out that most folks would do something that you would think would be even contrary to their natures if there was an authority figure there telling them to do it.
Those were the experiments in Yale University in 1961 when people were told to administer shocks. I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. I'm well aware of what it is.
Okay, well, we talked about earlier on the show. It didn't seem like we talked about it.
Okay, for one thing, humans are herd animals, right?
Exactly.
And they associate, just like, people associate with a sports team, how vociferous people are about that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's just human nature. And some people are going to have ideas that are absolutely whack, but fine, man, that's their ideas, big deal.
Well, it is a big deal.
There's Democrats who think that government is going to take care of schools and the minorities.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
it is a big deal when those people get into some form of power, though. For instance, let's go back to Roy Moore.
When it's no longer an idea, but an actual policy.
Roy Moore, hang on. An example again.
Okay.
Roy Moore is a judge.
Yeah.
If somebody goes into his courtroom, if I am accused of a crime and I go to his courtroom, he is a fundamentalist Christian who says only Christians need protection, and therefore you're not a Christian. He has to follow the law.
He's already flouted it.
But he can bend that law quite a bit ways.
Yeah.
He can't say, well, you're an atheist, so just get out of here.
Like he's running the state and the courts. It's not the case.
Well, he's got
power.
Well, so he wants it. Big deal. Al Gore.
It is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
We don't want a nutball like
he's
that in power.
Get it. It's never going to happen. So
there are a lot of folks. There are a lot of folks who are supportive of him, and politics.
That's how far he's gotten.
Politics is power.
How far has he gotten?
Well, he's gotten a lot.
The Supreme Court in Alabama.
Can I ask you a question?
He is the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court.
Okay.
So what? So what?
Let me ask you a question.
He is a theocrat. He is one of these people who wants to make Christianity the state religion of America.
Okay, great. Now,
he wants to make it compulsory. We have a problem with that. Do you or not?
Do I have a problem with it?
Do you have a problem with somebody with?
Yeah, I do, but it's
what you
realize it's never going to.
Wait a minute, you have a problem with it, but then it's like, so what? I mean, come on.
You don't want to do anything about it?
I mean, it's like, do you have convinctions about anything?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact.
Okay, because it just seems like
to answer a question, I'll answer a question. There's a lot of people in this world who want to do a lot of really stupid things. The odds of that happening are negligent and minimal.
Well, I'll remember that the next time I see a video of September 11th.
What does that have to do with religion?
It had to.
They were just nutballs also.
5 pages of prayers mentioning the word God 88 times found in Muhammad Atta's apartment.
So
it means religion.
Different than the Christian God. So which God is he talking about?
Doesn't matter.
What does it matter?
And
they had a belief
irrational belief
in their head that caused them to fly planes into buildings.
Okay, irrational beliefs make people do stupid, hurtful things.
Yeah. Okay. So you're comparing a judge in Alabama whose judicial record is spotless.
No, it's not.
Well, other than the fact that he has the Ten Commandments up.
He is known for. Okay, here's one of his famous cases. Okay, there was a case in which there was a child custody battle in which the woman had moved out of state and she had taken up in a relationship with another woman. Okay, the father of the child. Okay, and she was in a stable relationship now with another woman, a gay relationship.
Okay. What year was this?
The father. What's that got to do with it? The father had a history, a criminal record of domestic violence, which is part of the reason why the woman left him. Okay, Judge Roy Moore gave custody of the child to the abusive father solely on the basis of the fact that he doesn't like gay people because he's fundamentalist Christian, even though the mother was in a stable, nonviolent relationship out of state.
I have a hard time believing that a custody case went up in front of the Supreme Court justices of the state of Alabama.
He wasn't the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court when he tried that case.
What year did this happen? What year was this case?
I'll look it up.
Okay, because societal standards, lots of judges did the same thing back then.
Well,
it wasn't based on anything other than misinformation about homosexuals. And society has changed since then.
Yep, and that information on homosexuals mostly came from religion.
Mm-hmm. No, what are you talking about, man?
And so, it's
what other basis is there?
Yeah, I mean, Leviticus, pretty much says it outright. I mean, gay people are to be stoned to death. That's because they're an abomination in the sight of the Lord. You know, I mean, that's where homophobic ideas are rooted in. I mean, religious belief.
Yeah, there's people in PETA who think that people that eat animals should be killed.
Yeah,
I
know.
They're wacky people in every walk of life.
Yeah, and they're just as kooky. Hey, listen, you brought up a bunch.
You guys are great, man. I watch your show every week, and I'm just, to me, it's like, who cares? People propose, BS ideas every day.
Well, you know the old saying about, there was, people kept saying stand up to be counted, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And until they got to me, or however it goes.
Nobody was left.
But listen, Carl, you brought up a bunch of excellent points. It was a very good debate. Appreciate it.
No problem, man.
Thanks,
I appreciate your time. Have a good one.
Sure. Call us back any old time.
Yeah.
All right. That was good. It's interesting. I like those kind of calls. Yeah. Let's see what Mike has to say. It does seem like, and I know that, and we're on the show, right? And so we'll make jokes, and we will sometimes make very critical comments about individual figures in religion.
Yes.
Okay. But usually those are people who, it's not just because, they believe a kooky thing.
Yeah.
If we think the belief is kooky, we'll criticize the belief, and we'll try to give our reasons in as detailed a way as possible why we think the belief doesn't work.
And also, this is a very varied type of show. It's called the Atheist Experience. We cater to, again, atheists in the community. Mm-hmm. If we occasionally poke a little fun at somebody, we're not doing it to personally attack them and put them down and everything like that.
Well, unless it's somebody like Andrew, someone who...
Of course, if it's something like really wacky, but yeah, I mean, occasionally we are going to have a joke against religion.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, make the occasional crack at religion's expense. That shouldn't be a surprise on an atheist show. But if you have someone, I'll give you a perfect example. Somebody like Benny Hinn, okay? Yeah. Who is this goofball? Okay, and there we go. Personal attack. Oops, sorry. Okay. Who does his arena shows where he pretends to do the faith healing thing. Okay. Now, I'm sorry, and you might say, hey, so what, man? He's just doing this, and it's a big show, and if people want to believe that, what's the problem? Well, the problem is, that there are people out there who will forego legitimate medical treatment for their illnesses, in favor of trying to get this kind of faith healing done, which is all a crock, right? Yeah. And it's known that there were, Benny Hinn did a big thing in Kenya. Yeah. In 2000, he had this, 1 million people showed up at one of his faith rallies, right? And he had already made millions of Christians around America livid because he had claimed that Jesus was actually going to appear physically.
Yes.
at this healing rally that he did, right? So he was already kind of, taking pot shots for that. But it's known that at least four people in attendance at his rally in Kenya died.
Wow. Yeah.
Because they were sick people who turned up wanting to get healed.
Yeah.
Okay. And they were trying to get into the rally, and they died.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not that long ago, side case here, they had, I think it was in Canada, the
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Jehovah's Witnesses, exactly. Yeah. The girl had bone cancer, I believe it was.
Something. Needed a transfusion.
Exactly. I mean, she needed valid medical attention. They didn't give her anything until her tumor was the size of a basketball off her shoulder.
And the Jehovah's Witnesses...
then they said, okay, maybe now we'll bring her into a hospital.
The Jehovah's Witnesses are doctrinally opposed to blood transfusions. They have this interpretation from Scripture that it actually has to do with animal sacrifices, has nothing to do with blood transfusions, but they read it that way. Yeah. And so blood transfusions to Jehovah's Witnesses are a banned thing, even if it'll save your own child's life.
Exactly.
And what happened was doctors finally spelled the situation out to the girl's father and said, look, she's going to frickin' die if you don't do this. And he finally, I guess, wrestled with himself and made the rational decision and said, okay, do it. And as a result now, his daughter is alive, but he is now being shunned.
Actually...
Or how did that wrap up?
She did die.
Oh, she did?
It was too late, yeah.
Oh, well, that's a shame. Well, that's a bad. Well,
But
there
still,
you go.
But the point remains, we can't just roll over and say, oh, well, people have their beliefs.
Yeah, who
when they let
cares?
their own kids die of cancer.
Yeah. If it was just a matter of Guy A has a belief, and Guy B has a belief, and Guy C has a belief, and they're all just there stating their beliefs under, like, freedom of speech and what have you, hey, fine, no big deal. Yeah. But the problem is, beliefs aren't just things people say in a perfectly innocent expression of personal opinion. These are things that sometimes people put into practice that have an effect upon the lives and health and liberty of others.
Exactly.
You know? And France has this terrific law. Okay. And some people over here might consider it in like an infringement of speech rights and what have you. But it has to do with like creating false hopes.
Yeah.
And pardon me, Belgium. I'm hungry. Time to go. It has to, and we'll get to Mike here in just a second. And it was put in place to combat folks like, psychics and fortune tellers and palm readers and what have you, and the Church of Scientology also. It was really put in place to hit them very hard. And some folks might say, "But now wait, this is a freedom of religion infringement and what have you." And the argument I think can be made that, look, believe in what you want may be your business, okay? But when you have something that shows a distinct track record of harm, like real tangible harm, then that becomes like a public safety issue. Yeah. And maybe the government ought to take a hand there. Yeah. And
this law specifically, which you didn't actually cover, I don't think, or either I missed it and zoned out.
Maybe I didn't.
Was that you can't proselytize to people who are in a compromised position.
That's it. Yeah, taking advantage of
old people's homes, hospitals, stuff like that. You can't walk around the hospital deathbeds and said, "Now, if you come to Jesus, then you'll be happy again."
Yeah, people who are vulnerable.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you can't hit folks who are weak and easily susceptible.
Exactly.
Because it's taking advantage.
Exactly.
And and again, this all has to do with the fact that it's not just what you believe, but it's whether or not your beliefs, if they begin to have an effect that's deleterious to someone else's life, then that becomes, I think, an actual public safety issue and potentially a criminal issue. And Jeff D brought this up on the radio show, and I read the article in the new issue of Free Inquiry magazine. Okay. There's an article by Wendy Kaminer, who is a terrific writer. I like her a lot. She wrote this great book that debunks a lot of superstition. Okay. Sleeping with Extraterrestrials. Very highly recommended if you find it. Very funny book, all about just irrationalism in modern America. But she tried to make an argument that that it wasn't right for France to have a law like that. Yeah. And what Jeff D pointed out was that this has to do with, it's not just someone expressing a belief. Okay. I mean, this is fraud. Okay. Someone who claims to be a psychic and be able to tell your future. Okay. And, with accuracy, be able to tell how your love life's going to work out, how your job is going to work out, whether or not this or, what your kids are going to grow up to be. I mean, there are psychics who make these claims and people give them lots and lots of money. Yeah. Okay. So, if someone is going to make that claim, then they should be tested for their skills. Yeah. Okay, because otherwise it's a fraud situation, because usually these psychics turn out to be flat wrong. I mean, just look at any tabloid and then go back a year later when all the psychic predictions haven't come true. Yeah. Okay. And if someone were to come up to you and say, "Ashley, I have Palmer Auditorium, and I'm willing to sell it to you for $100.
Cool.
And you say, well, you might say that, but let's say you applied critical thinking and said, why would somebody show me? And you said, no, actually, sir, I'm going to call the police and have you arrested because you're trying to defraud me out of $100 because I don't believe you own Palmer Auditorium and are willing to sell it for that cheap. Yeah. What is that person going to do? Are they going to say, but wait, it's my freedom of speech to tell you that I own Palmer Auditorium and I can sell it to you for $100. Yeah. No, it's not. Freedom of speech doesn't cover stuff like deliberate fraud. Yeah. It doesn't cover stuff like people trying to lie to you and take financial or other personal advantage of you, which is harmful to you. That's
I would have much less of a problem with psychics and stuff like that if when you walked into their office and they'd, okay, now we will begin. This process is not intended to, display reality in any way.
You're like the newspaper horoscope.
Exactly.
This is for entertainment purposes.
This is entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to real life is purely coincidental.
If they did,
I would support it.
If they did that could be a dodge. They could actually get away with that because, believers would still believe.
Yes.
Believers would still believe. They wouldn't even notice that. So, all right. There we are. I know that we're being yelled at too, but we wanted to interesting details, and we wanted to get into that a bit more. Okay, Mike. Hey, thanks for waiting.
Hey guys, how's it going?
We're good. What's up?
I just wanted to know. I'm the same guy who called last week. We had a little debate for a while on just the basis of Christianity and how the Bible came about and stuff like that.
Okay.
But,
okay.
I've been watching your show today, and I just want to say, man, there are a lot of wacky people out there that claim everything they do is based on Christianity or a belief in God or a message from God or something like that. I think that for every one of those that is really exposed and you really see in the media that big, there's probably 100 or 1,000 normal Christians whose beliefs maybe aren't that strong or don't lead and do violent acts.
Of course, yeah.
In specific examples like that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And what I would like to see more of would be those Christians, right? The silent majority who don't favor the idea of overly politicizing their beliefs or practicing their beliefs in selfish ways that lead to hurting others, who think that's appalling. I'd like to see that silent majority of Christians being the one to really come down on the folks who are using Christianity for their own gain or to do harmful stuff or doing stuff that makes Christianity look bad. Those folks, because the Roy Moores of the world and the Benny Hinns of the world, they're not going to listen to us, right? Because we're the horrible godless heathens. But if Christians were to rise up and say, look, this is stupid and you shouldn't be doing it, and you certainly shouldn't be doing it in the name of your beliefs, which are insulting to me, because I have those beliefs and I don't think that those beliefs teach that, then, that's what needs to be happening. I'm really waiting for mainstream Christians to grow that backbone and come down on these ideologues and demagogues who are out there, trying to get power.
That is exactly where I'm at. And,
all right.
I mean, that point because, this is kind of taking it back to the beginning of the United States, actually. This country was founded on Christianity.
Let me stop you right there. Okay.
Let me just say something. I'm going your way real quick in just a second.
Okay.
On the other hand, one of the very, very basis of its foundation is religious freedom. Mm-hmm. So when you I mean that's why you have church and state separation all throughout the laws. Mm-hmm. Because when it comes to the point where your religious views are dictating how everybody else should live, then you're infringing on their religious freedom. Right. Obviously.
Yeah.
Whether, for instance, if you guys are pro-choice and they institute pro-life laws, there's not if it comes down to religious belief, then you're forced to live under that religion that you don't believe.
Right. I mean, not being a theocracy, you can't have one sectarian belief sort of getting all these favors from the government and getting preferential treatment over people who might practice a different one or none at all. But let me just read you just a couple of quotes. This is from John Adams in the Treaty of Tripoli, in Article 11 from the Treaty of Tripoli in 1797, where he makes it abundantly plain, as the government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. America is no more a Christian nation than it is a Jewish nation or a Mohammedan nation. There may very well have been definitely some moral precepts that might have been rooted in Scripture that inspired the way our system of government was set up. But to say that America was set up as a Christian nation is a fallacy. It was set up as you pointed out, a nation of religious liberty, where a person could come over and be Christian or be Jewish or be Muslim or be what have you, and feel like this was a home for them where they could be treated equally and fairly. So it's the most common fallacy from the folks who do want to politicize their religious beliefs, and wield power that way to say that America was founded as a Christian nation. Therefore, that's entirely what's behind Judge Roy Moore and his whole agenda of putting up Ten Commandments monuments and defying the appellate court and what have you. But no, that's not the case. This was set up as a nation of religious liberty, not just a Christian religion and everybody else is a second-class citizen.
That's exactly true.
Okay,
hey,
good.
I'm gonna get off the phone here pretty quick. But
All
I
right.
just want to say,
Oops, I dropped my pen.
you guys, this may sound kind of weird, but I'd like to invite you guys to church sometime.
Well, I attended for many, many years. Thank you. I can, so unless they have a new message, I don't know what there would be more to hear. But feel free to call us up anytime and challenge us on anything. All right? Take care. Okay, who's next, Ryan, or who's Ryan is next? Hey, you're on the air. Thanks for holding.
Yeah, I'm calling about that guy who earlier said, about Utah alcohol.
Uh-huh.
Well,
That you cannot drink, or you can?
You can drink. There's state-owned liquor stores where you can buy, the malt liquors and stuff.
Yeah, it's like...
Just that, if you want to buy the regular, you have to go to a state-owned liquor store, and then other than that, it's all 3.2.
Yeah, I guess
But
that...
if you're drinking at high altitude, you don't really need...
Well, no, that's right.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, maybe that guy's friend just ran into
Ran into somebody who wanted to take his beer.
You can't even, you can't cross county lines.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't even, have alcohol, period.
Yeah, there's some counties in Texas where you have to they're dry, and if you go to a bar, you have to get a membership at the bar.
Yeah.
And drink that way. Yeah. And they have liquor stores, but it's fun. Yeah, it's like you have to go to the next county if you want to buy certain types of liquor. But you can get beer at the convenience store, but if you want a whiskey, or when you have to go 30 miles out of your way and have a license or what have you. So it's strange. Yeah. This all the Sunday blue laws.
Yeah, and there's other things people talk about how Utah's so strong, Mormon and controlled, and it's all Mormons. Mm-hmm. Basically, the Mormons are the ones who rebuilt the Catholic Church when it was about ready to fall down. There's a Baptist church that's been there for over 100 years. They're the ones who put the bill for that to be fixed. Mm-hmm. And there's only
ungrateful Baptists.
Utah, but there's more Mormons in Los Angeles than there's people in the state of Utah.
Yeah, that could very well be true.
13 million Mormons worldwide, and there's only 2 million people in Utah.
Yeah.
And Mormons control Nevada, so it's not really so much of a Mormon issue to that. Because, there's gambling and alcohol over there, and the majority of the people in Nevada are Mormon.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a matter of those who are in control and see where the money and the power is and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, that's a good points, and thanks for bringing that up and clarifying that. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. Very interesting. Okay. Rock is online. Just want to remind all of the, in our last 8 minutes, our clock's not working, then unbelievers to visit our bagel shops meetings. If you are an atheist or agnostic and want to meet other atheists, our bagel shop meetings are 10:30 a.m. Sunday mornings at Hot Jumbo Bagels. Visit our lovely website above Ashley's skull for directions. And Rock is next caller on line 2. Hi, you're on the air.
Hey, Martin, how you doing?
Oh, hi.
Good to talk to you guys. Just want to make one small point. You had a caller previously that basically was saying that you get enough legislators in the Fed, in the House, say, or in the Senate to vote on something, and they get the majority, and that's it. Mm-hmm. But, in fact, that's a little naive. We don't live in a pure democracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are certain money is a powerful player, and there are certainly, there's influence.
Well, I was talking about the Constitution.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
we have a Constitution, and the first thing all of these legislators do is take an oath to uphold the Constitution.
Right.
Yeah. And so if they're talking about legislation that's not according to the Constitution, then, which unfortunately a lot of it is not according to the Constitution, then they're technically in violation of treason by not upholding the oath to protect the Constitution.
Yeah.
And that's a serious matter. He can say, so what? But look up the punishment for treason sometime. It's a pretty serious matter.
Yeah. Well, now hang on a second, though. Is treason just... Would just failing to uphold your sworn duties of defending the Constitution constitute treason, or is treason something a little stronger? Isn't it you're actually doing something active to, aid and abet the enemy and undermine your country's security and I mean, isn't treason a little more of a deliberate thing than just?
Why are we going after Roy Moore for treason then?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't.
The truth is treason doesn't stick very often because it's so extreme a charge to bring.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you would have to.
You could make the case for it, but I don't think it would hold up in today's court.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
to say so what to it is incredibly naive.
Well, I think I mean that's the point that I think we were trying to make to that. And
the only way that we can protect our rights. Whether you're an atheist or you're any kind of potentially maligned minority, is to be vocal about it.
Sure.
And that's the point. So it's only fringe Christians who are pushing some political agenda. Yeah. Well, there needs to be other people to counterbalance that anyway.
Yeah, because again, I mean, these folks have the power of the media to get their message across, and they can be very influential. And very, and of course, I didn't mean to resort to Godwin's law there when I brought up the old Adolf example, but the fact remains that Adolf was an example of a guy in history who was an inconsequential nobody who, through the power of his rhetoric, managed to get a whole nation behind him of what you would think would be ordinarily sane, normal folks to support something completely insane. And I don't think there's anybody. I don't think there's anybody in the country today who's like his equivalent. But it's the same process. It's the same situation of, okay, you've got this one guy and he's an ideologue and he's out there spouting his views. So what? Well, ideologues, because they're charismatic, because they have the power of the media behind them, they can sway folks who don't employ proper critical thinking and what have you to what they're saying. So it's not just, there's not this magic system of checks and balances that always puts, the wingnuts out to, off to the fringe. I mean, if it always worked that perfectly and cleanly, great, but it doesn't. I mean, it's not realistic to think that it does.
Also, the system itself becomes subject to stress. Mm-hmm. And 9/11 was a brilliant example of that in terms of the stress that's put on the system. And so people are more likely to put up with things that they normally wouldn't in terms of curtailing their liberties.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just because they're scared.
Yeah.
And so that's a natural human reaction, and it puts the whole political system under a lot of stress. And unscrupulous people can take advantage of that.
Yes.
Well, and in my opinion, are doing so.
The Patriot Act, which is quite dubious in its.
So the last thing we need is people calling and saying, "So what?" We need more people who are thinking about things and aware and involved, whatever your particular political persuasion might be. The point is to get involved and to be knowledgeable and learn. And so forth.
Yeah, the wackos will get in power and get more power if everybody else says, so what?
Yeah. So. I mean, right. So what just is never a way to really accomplish anything.
It's just a pathway to power.
Yeah. I mean, it's the old, the famous saying of the easiest way for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
Which is a great old. But we appreciate you. Thanks, Rock. And we appreciate you bringing up that point because, of course, that was the point that we were trying to make to that caller. Yeah. Who was a good caller. Yeah.
And if we can get Judge Roy Moore on treason, that would rock.
I would just rather people see him for the demagogue ideologue he is, but then, of course, if we could get him for,
it would be fun.
Just have him declared an enemy of the state first, like Emperor Nero, and then we'll take it from there. Yeah. Boy. Hey, folks, I think we're just about done for the show today, down the last to our couple 3 minutes. If you have further questions for us and you want to bring them to our attention and challenge us, go right ahead. TV@atheist-community.org is your viewer email address. To write us emails, we'll certainly write back. But, of course, we are here every Sunday at 4:30, and reruns of this show, taped reruns, play at 4:30 p.m. on Tuesdays, right here on Channel 10. Our clock in here is not working, the thing that's not working this week in the studio, so we're just going to have to rely on
one piece of
the control room for our countdown to the last few seconds of the program. So,
Bagel Shop?
Bagel Shop meetings for unbelievers. I already brought that up.
Always open.
But please visit our website once again, atheist-community.org. Here's a list of other web pages that we have of interest to folks if you want information about just various stuff. How much time do we have? I haven't a clue. So
I have 1 minute.
Okay. Are we going to wave bye-bye for 60 seconds? Or,
oh, come on. News story.
Okay. Yeah, we got a minute left. Tell you what, listen, we want to go ahead and encourage everyone to get active, and stay on top of what's going on in the world, because it can and will have an effect on you.
Yes.
And sometimes before you even realize it. I mean, there are people who are trying to reinstate mandatory prayer in school. There are Christians trying to overturn Roe v. Wade. There are people trying to...
They've got the moment of silence passed in Texas.
Yeah.
Which, just like in Louisiana, it's probably going to open the door to say, well, kids don't know how to use that moment of silence appropriately, so let's start praying for them.
Yeah. I mean,
and then as soon as that happens, it just blows up in their face.
That happened in Louisiana. So one day the moment of silence suddenly became a moment of recited prayer.
Recited loudspeaker
and then
prayer.
the courts had to shoot it down, and it was a big... So just avoid the mess. Let people decide. Let people practice their own religion.
Exactly.
Or not. Okay. That's it then. Let's wave bye-bye. Theists, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Thanks for watching.